Okay, welcome to this evening session, everyone. At least it's evening where I am in Guelph, Ontario, and I'm Elizabeth Shervati, and I am a registered acupuncturist, a naturopathic doctor, and a natural fertility expert. And I am bringing you tonight this webinar, Overcoming Hidden Obstacles to Fertility Simplified. So before we go too much further, I just want to welcome everyone here this evening. And I know you set aside time in your busy schedule to be here, and I really, really appreciate that. And I'm so excited to share all of this information with you. And I hope that it will be of great value in your fertility journey. And once again, I just want to ask you to click on your control panel, the little hand icon, if you can hear me right now. Great. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Kay. That's great. I see a number of hands going up, so everyone should be able to hear me. That's great. And just so you are aware, you are all muted right now. And if you have a question, we can do one of two things. You can type it into the question dialog box on your screen, or you can also raise your hand and I will unmute you and you can ask a question. Okay, very good. So let's begin. And I think, Megan, you have your hand up. Did you have a question or do you want to? Oh, she's put it down. Okay, great. Okay, so let's jump in, everyone. You're in the right place here this evening if you are ready to discover whether hidden obstacles may be blocking your path to pregnancy, and to learn 7 simple lifestyle habits that can help you to overcome certain obstacles to fertility and empower your journey toward parenthood. And I believe this webinar will also help you to proactively prepare for a healthy pregnancy in this next year. On the webinar, I am going to show you why infertility is a growing problem. There are 3 major hidden causes of infertility that doctors aren't talking about in my experience and in lots of literature research. And I would love to highlight those to you, as well as 7 ways to naturally boost your fertility. And I hope that it will give you a sense of self-empowerment, even though we're sharing just about an hour and a quarter today. I hope that it will just infuse you on your journey and give you some support. And if you are able to stay on till the end of the call, I'm going to let you know about an opportunity to connect with me and speak to me in a personal conversation about where things might be heading for you in your journey. So stick around till the end and I'll let you know how that will all work. So this is about me, just before we jump into all the material for tonight. And this photograph of me holding a little baby, that's my niece, Eden, and that was about a day after she was born. And I had the honor of attending her birth to support my sister. And when I held her, I just remember this moment because it was a waking up moment, I think, in my life and in my mission. And when I experienced this kind of blurring in my peripheral vision that I think a lot of you may have experienced before, if you've held a newborn or if you have children already at home of your own, or nieces and nephews. And it's just so amazing to feel that biology kind of turn on, and it really awakened my passion for supporting women and couples even before they conceive, to help them bring in the healthiest babies that they can into the world. And that has become my legacy, or my passion in my work and in my life, to help as many of you as possible to invest in yourselves today, so that you can pave the way for an easy and healthy pregnancy, healthy conception, great delivery. It's just all such a trajectory in my mind, and I know that right now you're looking for conception as soon as possible, and I just want to let you know that we are working on that through all this information, and we're also investing in the potential of your future baby's health. So Sandy, I see that you have raised a question. So I'm just going to, you're asking if you'll have a copy of the presentation. So Sandy, what I will do is I will be able to send out a link to the recording so that you can have all of the information. Once again, that will be sent out to you shortly after the webinar is completed. Okay, great, so you'll have that to access. So I believe that the health of the next generation begins with you today, and you as women and men before you conceive are essentially the most important population from a public health perspective, from a life of health of future generations perspective, and I'm so excited to have a chance to share this empowering information with you. So some of you will have already been diagnosed or are facing a diagnosis of infertility, and I just want to point out that this is a growing concern. Infertility has become 3 times more prevalent in just one generation. And these are Canadian-based statistics, so it will be very similar in other countries. Some of you are tuning in from the US today, and we will have very similar rates essentially in the Western world, and it may even be worse in developing countries, in the industrial parts of developing countries. And so 1 in 6 couples are affected, so you are most definitely not alone, although infertility is definitely a health concern that doesn't get talked about a lot in public, and there are probably a lot of reasons for that. It does affect men and women equally, and I have here a graph that just illustrates the change in the prevalence graphically. So you can see here from the early 80s where infertility was about 5%, and there's been a tripling of that rate. Almost 16% of couples are struggling with this, with infertility as of 2010. And I think that is just absolutely striking. I don't know of another public health condition that is growing so quickly. And of course, it comes with a ton of stress, and you can run absolutely the emotional gamut when you're working on fertility or infertility. And it's extremely stressful on couples, and women do tend to bear the brunt of infertility-related stress when you're comparing a man or woman in a couple. So TTC, for trying to conceive, you're probably starting to see this hashtag coming up in social media, and timeline stress. So whether or not you're dealing with a known infertility, there is a timeline associated with our fertility plans. And that's because we may be focusing on career, education. We may have had a previous relationship that we've gotten out of, or for many different reasons. And for women especially, there's a pressure around fertility, and and trying to get to this outcome as soon as possible, and that tends to be challenging, especially when we are in our late 30s and early 40s, and we'll go into some of the reasons for that tonight, as well as getting into some of the hidden reasons that aren't getting talked about enough. Okay, so really fair and legitimate questions, and if you resonate with one of these, I just want you to reflect on it and maybe take out a piece of paper, or you can jot this down on your phone and your notes. Think about what questions you've been asking, and now that we've dedicated this time to talk about fertility, what's really on your mind? And I've heard lots in my practice why can't I conceive? You know, we've had miscarriages. Why did that happen? How can we prevent that from happening again? How do I boost my chances for having a healthy baby? And ultimately, is there something wrong with me? You know, I see a lot of women and some men too. My practice is mostly working with women, but certainly I work with men, and I like to do that because it's really important to treat both partners. And often it's that you're attributing your infertility with an inherent or personal failure or flaw. And I find that's really, really sad, and it is a challenge, but it's really common. And so part of the infertility stress is really attributing the condition to to something within yourself. So if you haven't already, take a moment to note down your questions, and I'm going to open up a poll. And so everyone who is able to everyone should be able to see their control panel right now. And I'm going to pop up a question for you. And the question is simple, and it's what you want to most to learn from today's webinar. And so what I'll have you do is just click the box according to the answer that matches your intention best. And I'll give you about 15 seconds to click that answer. So you only get to pick one. So go ahead and pick your answer. And then the box will go away once we've gotten back to the lecture. Great job, guys. I'll give you about 5 more seconds to vote. Okay, awesome. So let me close this up and I'll show you what the results were. So it's all going to be anonymous and everyone's going to be able to see what percentage of you voted for what. So about 2/3 of you are interested in knowing how to boost your fertility naturally. Awesome, and 17% of you equally, and three equal parts, and 17% are looking for how to approach your fertility natural, what's out there, what's available, how to know if you do have an underlying problem with your fertility, and how to receive more help on your fertility. Great, well, let me make sure that I will address each of those, and certainly toward the second 2/3 of the webinar tonight, we will be looking at that top priority for most of you, which is how to boost your fertility naturally. So fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for voting. Okay. And now I've designed this table to help you in your journey. And based on my experience working with many couples through fertility concerns and issues, I've noticed that there are certain themes that come up. And I've compared those themes, different stages or states, to what I call a fertility index. And as you can see, the highest kind of rating on this index would be 80+, and that's where you're feeling confident and self-actualized, which means you're supported, you're independent, you're assertive, you're informed, and you're leaning into all of the practices that can help you conceive, and you are empowered in your journey such that you feel able to ask questions, you feel like you've built your foundation and you've broken through certain obstacles that may have been standing in your way. And meanwhile, kind of below this line is where you may be feeling right now, some of you, which is frustrated or fearful or forsaken. And, it's really, really common to go through these stages. So I just want you to tune into where you are tonight, and we'll come back to this. So why is fertility an issue in the first place? And as a naturopath, I always ask why, because that's how we get to the root cause of the problem in order to correct it. First off, we do know that about 1/3 of infertility cases are related to male factors, 1/3 to female factors. About 20% are due to couple factors together, and about 10% are considered unexplained. And in this 10% unexplained, this is actually where naturopathic approaches, natural medicine, shines and can help you really, really catapult your fertility forward. I have a woman in my practice last week who has been diagnosed with unexplained infertility, and she had conceived her first child with IVF and was about to go for that next month, and we started working together, and in about 5 weeks, we were able to help her learn how to know when she's fertile. We did some changes on her nutrition, reduced some stress, did some acupuncture, and she is pregnant and thrilled. And the best part about this is not only the pregnancy itself, but how empowered she feels and how thrilled she and her husband are that they did this together. And that's not possible for everyone, but it is possible in more couples than we realize. And I'm going to again get into why that's the case and what we can do about it. So first off, there's a lot of factors that you've probably heard about. We're getting married a little bit older than average. In fact, about 11% of firstborn children are now being born to mothers who are over 35, and that has quadrupled since the early 80s. So, again, in one generation, it's pretty normal now to get married a little bit later. At least a quarter of us are highly stressed due to work alone. This was a Canadian study, and women, as I said, experience higher levels of fertility-related stress. And stress is a big deal when it comes to fertility, and I know a lot of your doctors may have said it's not, and then some of your doctors are saying, well, just relax and you'll get pregnant, and that's equally as distressing sometimes to hear it oversimplified and kind of patronizing. So it's somewhere in the middle, and stress, when we're in a stress state, the body cannot be receptive to conception. And that's because the nerves that control our stress response are dialed up, and another department of our nerves have to be dialed down when that's the case. So the nerves that control resting and digesting and procreating are quiet and not really active when we're in a stress response, and essentially our body is feeling like we're escaping a threat or we are under a threat, and those two states are just not compatible. And to some extent, our nutrition choices have changed. Our recreation choices, and there's been a large spike in the amount of heavy drinking among women, and this affects our fertility. So in about 20 years ago, only about 9% of women would report that they engaged in heavy drinking, and that was defined as having five or more drinks at least once per month. And now about 20% of women drink that much, and that's over a 200% increase. So that's one factor that's been cited in literature as to why infertility is increasing. Another one is an increase in sexually transmitted illnesses. Now, a lot of times, sexually transmitted illnesses, including chlamydia and gonorrhea, may not even have symptoms in both women or men. And so it can take years sometimes if we're not getting checked and having swabs done every time we change partners. It can take years to even realize that you have an STI, and the STIs cause inflammation and potentially scar tissue in your reproductive system. So it's extremely important to take care of this as soon as possible within your fertility journey. Of course, we all know that our average weight has increased in again, just one generation. And you can see here on this diagram, the average body mass index, or BMI, was a healthy weight for women in 1981. And in 2008, which is the most recent average that I found, it had increased to 29.5, which is overweight. And that represents approximately 17 pounds greater weight for an average 5'4" tall woman in the 20 to 39 years age range. You can see at the bottom of the screen too, 12% of cases of infertility related to the female's weight, and that could be too high or it could be too low of a weight. Another factor is autoimmunity. And autoimmune illnesses mean that the immune system is turning around and attacking some aspect of yourself. Women in the childbearing ages, are the greatest population of autoimmune sufferers, and there are about 80 known autoimmune illnesses currently. It's also a leading cause of death and disability in women who are under 65. And the childbearing years is often when autoimmune illnesses like, for example, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, that's Hashimoto's thyroiditis, that's often when these illnesses are being detected and diagnosed. And it's a challenge to fertility. And I'll get into a little bit more of that shortly. There are also medications that can interact with your fertility, of course, birth control pills being the number one. And we have spent, many of us, a couple decades avoiding pregnancy and doing everything we can to not get pregnant. And now we're going to, we kind of end up at the point where we're ready and we're totally switching our mindset. And also, of course, letting go of using those medications. And some women do have long-term issues with them, although the studies don't really show that. It's sort of case by case in my experience where, women had normal periods before the pill and then she goes off of it and now she doesn't. So whether it's something that happened in between or a disease process that was simply masked by having you have a forced period every month, we don't know, but there's certainly a correlation with certain prescription drugs that aren't compatible with fertility. I wanted to just point out too that new research is showing that non-steroidal anti-inflammatories that are over-the-counter, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like naproxen, which many women use for period cramps, have been shown to inhibit ovulation and inhibit progesterone. So what you're taking to manage a headache or period cramps can be a really big deal, and I always suggest now to find an alternate to those medications if you can at all, because they can delay ovulation. We're also malnourished. Now, in our part of the world, Canada and the US, we have the standard American diet, which is also known as the SAD diet. And that's because it's high in calories, so there's lots of basically protein, carbohydrates, and fats, but it's low in micronutrients. It's low in vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. Those are the nutrients that we're really looking for to classify a diet as nutritious. We're also subject to environmental contamination. This is an excerpt from the Environment and Working Group's website. I highly recommend you guys check this out, ewg.org. It's an awesome resource for looking at your cosmetics and seeing if they are potentially hormone disrupting or toxic, as that's an industry that is completely unregulated as to what they can be putting in and what those chemicals could be doing in our bodies when we absorb them through our skin. And they have great articles like this one. So this is a list of endocrine disruptors. You'll be familiar with BPA, bisphenol A, found in plastics, and there are 85,000 man-made chemicals now out there in the environment, and we are definitely absorbing them and getting exposed to them. And we'll talk a little bit about how we can manage that and decrease our exposure to them. So those are the factors that are kind of out there in the media that you may already be familiar with that are affecting our fertility. Now, there's a few causes of infertility that I'm finding in my practice really need to be brought out to the open. So I wanted to share this with you tonight. So let's look a little bit deeper and look for those hidden ones. So the first of the big three hidden factors are immune infertility. And what's happening here is it's similar to autoimmunity, where your immune system, whether you're a man or a woman, is somehow attacking an aspect of your fertility. Has anyone heard of immune infertility before? By clicking on your box, you'll be able to see, or on the little box with the hand icon, you'll be able to say yes if you've heard of it before. So it doesn't look like anybody's raising their hand tonight, and that's totally okay and doesn't surprise me at all, and that's why I'm so excited to let you know about it. The leader on immune infertility research is a fertility doctor by the name of Alan Beer, and he is based in the US, and his practice is really focused on immune infertility, and women and men will go to his practice when almost like a last resort often, because none of the other clinics that they've worked with have really examined this issue. So the body is attacking, and the immune system is attacking some aspect of fertility, and that could affect your embryo even after implantation. Hormones and hormone receptors, so damaging the way that hormones interact and get balanced. It can even affect sperm. So both men and women's bodies can be making antibodies that attack and bind with sperm and tag them for destruction before they're even able to fertilize an egg. The reasons why immune infertility happen can be varied, and there's about 5 major categories of these, so I'll just touch on them. The main issue here is that the couple's genetics could be too similar to each other, and this is the case of immune infertility against the embryo. So certain genes, if they're the same or too similar between the man's and the woman's, when they combine together to make your embryo, the woman's body may not be able to recognize that embryo as being other, as being the pregnancy. It's instead recognizing it as being an altered form of herself and saying, whoa, that's altered form of myself. I better launch an immune attack against that and clear that out. Okay, so that can be a reason why a couple has miscarriages, for example. Blood clotting issues like factor V lead-in, antiphospholipid syndrome, those are issues that relate to immune infertility. So you might want to be cross-checked by your doctor as to immune factors if you have a clotting issue. There can be immune responses to the baby. There can be antibodies to sperm, as I mentioned, and also there can be an overactivity of a woman's immune cells, like her natural killer cells that are naturally going to be present in the uterus. If they're overacting against certain aspects, then it can break up the eggs and produce a poor quality embryo. So it's very serious, and it's not really talked about. So if you want to learn more about it, check out Dr. Alan Beer's book. It's called Is Your Body Baby Friendly? Okay, the second one is, it can be very subtle clinically. It can involve stubborn weight loss, and it tends to be completely subclinical, and for this reason it's getting missed. And this is subclinical hypothyroidism. Subclinical hypothyroidism is defined by having a TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, greater than 2.5. Now, most of our physicians will say if our TSH is under 5, or in some cases 4.6, they are not concerned at all about our thyroid. But in very high level standards on endocrinology worldwide, experts agree and practice standards agree that the TSH level should be under 2.5 for optimal pregnancy and fertility. And the thyroid hormones, of course, relate into lots of things like, and they interact with our period and all kinds of other issues. So it's a super important gland to know it's healthy. Now, Hashimoto's thyroiditis is the most common cause of hypothyroidism, and it is autoimmune. So this is one of those illnesses that I mentioned before where the immune system is attacking an aspect of yourself. In this case, it's attacking your thyroid health. And many women, even if you've been diagnosed with hypothyroidism or even subclinical hypothyroidism, and maybe you've been given thyroid replacement hormones like T3 or T4 to help you get pregnant, you may not have ever been tested for this condition, this autoimmune cause of the hypothyroidism. And from my perspective as a naturopathic doctor, I always look for this because it's totally different treatment plans. One is treating the immune system, and one is simply giving the thyroid a boost if you're kind of simple hypothyroidism. When populations are surveyed, about 6.5 to 8.7% of women have been found to have subclinical hypothyroidism, and that is a fairly significant statistic. Autoimmune anti-thyroid antibodies, so antibodies that attack the thyroid, are present in about a third of women with infertility. So it's really important to get this checked out if you have symptoms that may correspond with hypothyroidism, and those would include stubborn weight loss, or I should say weight gain, that is really slow to reverse. You could have brain fog, you could have constipation, thin hair, dry skin, loss of hair in your eyebrows. There could be a number of symptoms there, and it's such a simple test. It's just a quick blood test for 2 types of antibodies. It's highly valuable to get this looked at. So I want to share with you a case study from my practice. And none of these are their real names, and I've taken out all the personally identifying details just to give you the picture of what's going on here. And Dana was 40 when she came to see me, and she had a teenager at home, her daughter, and she had married her second husband, and he was 38, and he was otherwise healthy, and this mama had known Hashimoto's hypothyroidism and had been just prescribed thyroid replacement hormone. She still felt symptomatic, like constipated and really chilly and cold, like classic hypothyroidism. They had been trying to conceive for the previous 9 months, and she had already had 2 miscarriages and possibly a very early third pregnancy loss as well. And we also found that she had low iron stores, and her uterine lining had been suggested to be thin in work with her nurse practitioner. So she wasn't happy with how she felt on her thyroid medication, and she actually took herself off of that. And in the meantime, we did some natural thyroid support, and we supplemented with L-arginine, which is an amino acid that helps to build up blood flow into the uterus. She did fish oils and probiotics, some castor oil packs, and some walks for exercise, and we worked on her sleep. And I asked her to start tracking her temperature, her basal body temperature, or her BBT. And we started working on her iron and gave her some acupuncture therapy every week. In the second month, we added coenzyme Q10, which is an awesome antioxidant for follicle quality, inositol for follicle quality, and 2 herbs to support hormonal balance, specifically more progesterone and more thyroid health with the Vitex and Withania, respectively. After 8 weeks, she had conceived, she had a healthy pregnancy, and she recently gave birth to a beautiful baby girl in September, and everybody is doing well, and we are thrilled for her. Okay, with that under our wing, we are now at the third major hidden obstacle to fertility. And that is hidden hormonal imbalances. And these can take quite a few different forms. So I'm going to give you the example tonight of low progesterone. And here's a case study to illustrate what that might look like. So Christina was 28 when she came to see me, and she and her husband had been trying to conceive for a year, and they had one IUI cycle, and she didn't really enjoy that process, and she wanted to take a break from it and not do that and focus on natural conception, if at all possible. And she was under quite a bit of stress and felt anxious about her work. And she was already tracking her cervical mucus, which is the #1 way to know when you're fertile. And we noted that she had a later ovulation. It was about cycle day 19 on a 29-day cycle, and that would be considered a late ovulation or a long follicular phase. So we had her start to take Vitex, which is also known as chasteberry or chastetree, and to continue checking her cervical mucus. We did some dietary modification, and we initiated some acupuncture treatment. And she conceived after 1 cycle of active treatment, so about 4 weeks, and had her baby a year ago. And everybody is doing amazingly well, and we are super happy. So another hormonal imbalance that is often hidden is PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome. And this one is surprisingly hidden in that it is the most common hormone disorder in women, where up to 20% of women in the reproductive years actually have it, but 70% of them are estimated to be undiagnosed. And PCOS is responsible for 3/4 of infertility due to lack of ovulation. So in women with PCOS, they aren't ovulating regularly, or they may have missed or irregular periods. They have high male hormones or signs of male hormones like acne, or some facial hair growth or hair loss on the head. It doesn't have to be proven in blood work for you to be diagnosed, but again, it's often missed if you don't fit the physical picture that doctors are expecting. So usually doctors are expecting you to be overweight and have facial hair, and that may not be the case at all. And also PCOS is really important for women's health in general because it increases the risks of other long-term serious health conditions. So as I mentioned, there's a diagnostic criteria dilemma where not everyone agrees on how this is going to be diagnosed, and so often it's getting missed in clinics, and you don't even have to have polycystic ovaries per se to receive a diagnosis of PCOS and to have the underlying hormonal imbalance that is actually blocking you from ovulating, which means that you cannot conceive. So I see there are a couple questions, so go ahead and post your questions if you have them at this point, and I'll start to answer them. Just want to make sure everyone's getting what they need here tonight. And so KM is asking, do we know the cause of PCOS? Great question. There's research that takes the cause of PCOS all the way back to genetics and heredity, where at least some of the genes that are involved in PCOS are genes that relate to a woman's survival in times of famine or stress. So many women with PCOS will have high insulin levels. They may be overweight. They don't have to be, though. But probably about 3/4 would be overweight today. And it's kind of like the idea here is that there's genes of conservation. So genes that make it easier to survive in times of stress, famine, there's not enough nutrition, and then get passed on right to next generation if you're able to survive those physical challenges. So that might be part of where it's ultimately coming from. And of course, there are many hormone disrupting chemicals in the environment. There is a preponderance of intake of high carbohydrate diets, and that is really not the right diet for women with PCOS. It's not the right diet really for most of us, but it definitely worsens PCOS. So I would say it's a combination of genes and environment, just like most chronic illnesses are today. Does that help? Okay, great. Okay, so a third case study. I worked with a woman known that I'm going to call Melissa, and she was, again, 28 when we started to work together, and she did have PCOS that she knew of, and she also had hypothyroidism that she knew of. And she was using donor sperm and had already 3 pregnancies with IVF, which all ended in miscarriage, unfortunately. And so at the time that we started working together, she was taking metformin, and metformin is probably the most common drug offered to women with PCOS, and it is a drug that reduces the blood sugar, or I should say the insulin. So it helps to manage the metabolic dysfunction in PCOS, and not everybody feels bad on it, but in this case she did. She didn't feel well on it. And so we were working on working with acupuncture and inositol, because inositol is a nutrient that has been shown to be equally effective as metformin at reducing metabolic abnormalities and restoring ovulation, and it's much safer. So she decided to work with that and no longer needed her metformin when she checked in with her physician. So she was able to go off of it and felt much better. And she lost almost 20 pounds by the time we were at our about 3 months of prep. And she went into her IVF cycle in the best health that she could remember. And she did conceive right away at that 3-month, 4-month point. And she's having a great pregnancy, and her baby is due this winter. So I know most of you really wanted to focus on what we can do to boost our fertility. So this is the section where we're going to work on that. And we have about 15 minutes left to go, so hang in there, we're almost there. I'm going to give you lots of tips in rapid fire here. So I designed this webinar to help you feel empowered, to give you strength and control in claiming back your fertility. And through empowering your fertility, you're also empowering your health and yourself, your deeper emotional and subconscious self. That's why I love working with you in this way. And so I want to give you tools that will help you build your fertile foundation. So let's jump into that. Number 1 is to chart smart. So I know fertility can actually feel really complex to many of us, especially for our male partners. And when they see us kind of charting and doing apps and taking our temperature, they often get really freaked out. But it's actually just such an empowering way for you to get to know your fertility and how your body works. And so what I've done for you all, it's just a little bit of a gift, is I've attached to the handout section of this webinar a couple documents, and you can go ahead and download those if you haven't already. So the first there in your list is a fertility chart. It says fertility chart _print, and that is a chart that you are welcome to use. It captures all the information that you need to know every cycle to help empower your knowledge about your fertility and move to the next stage, which is knowing that you're fertile, knowing when you're fertile, and then, of course, timing intercourse accordingly. That's, of course, if you're looking at natural conception. But even if you are planning to go into assisted reproduction, I would highly, highly recommend that you get to know your innate fertility in this way, because it can give you a great amount of empowerment. So here you can see on this slide I've highlighted the major points, and you can use a chart like the one I've given you, or you can use an app as long as you make sure that it has these points in it. Okay, so don't just go with the apps that say, oh, your average cycle is 28 days, you're going to ovulate on day 14, go have sex now. You know, your body doesn't know what that app is saying, and you need to check with your body as to when you're fertile. And so the way to do that is to notice your basal body temperature every morning when you wake up and your cervical mucus. And that will change when you're most fertile to be that slippery or egg white consistency. Usually both you and your partner will notice that. Okay, number 2 is to nourish your bod like it's your job. Preconception undernutrition, so lack of micronutrients such as vitamins and minerals and antioxidants, is known to put you and your baby at risk for a number of issues. There can be more DNA breakages in eggs and sperm, so this goes for both men and women. It doesn't go well for your fertility, and micronutrient undernutrition can put your pregnancy at risk. And of course, all this is aimed at increasing your baby's future health. So I do encourage you to be taking a prenatal. I encourage men to be taking some certain nutrients as well, because that makes it an incredible investment in the health of their sperm and the DNA inside their sperm, which will one day unite to become the blueprint of your future baby's health. So a couple things I wanted to point out. I really encourage you to be taking, instead of folic acid, this nutrient, L5-MTHF, which stands for L5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. And that's the active form of folic acid. And the reason why I recommend it is that folic acid is a synthetic form of this vitamin, and we've recently understood that a certain percentage of the population does not process folic acid into folate efficiently. And so you can end up with a functional folate deficiency, and folate is the nutrient that prevents neural tube defects, so spinal cord issues, in the early stages of pregnancy. Even sometimes before you know you're pregnant, you have to have enough of this nutrient. It also shields your DNA from damage. And it also reduces homocysteine, which is a toxic amino acid that builds up in our metabolism if there are deficiencies of folate or B12, vitamin B12. And homocysteine has actually been linked with miscarriage risk. So it's really important to have enough folate in your diet, and you can guarantee that if you're taking a supplement that contains the L5 form. I really encourage you to check your iron stores. Your ferritin before conception should ideally be over 50, and many doctors are sort of saying, yeah, your iron looks great. If it's 17 or 12, anything over 10 or 11 is often just waived, given the go-ahead. But in research, iron stores, which is ferritin, are shown to be ideally between 70 and 100 for women, and definitely more optimal over 50. Going beyond your basic prenatal includes taking an omega-3 or a DHA source, extra vitamin D, because the vitamin D deficiency has been linked with infertility, and there's only 1,000 international units in your basic prenatal. Vitamin K2, which is not showing up in prenatals yet, but is important in your baby's skeletal development, and is present in fermented foods, which are really low, tend to be really low in our diet. Methylcobalamin is the only source of vitamin B12 that I would recommend, as it's giving you a little bit of methyl donors, which I won't get into the biochemistry of tonight, but it is really important in DNA health. And then the fertility diet, which is another webinar that I will be offering actually very soon, and I'll send you out an email to register for that if you're interested. We won't have time to get into it tonight, but just know that that's there. So I don't want you to just all live on supplements. There is actually real food stuff that is super important and much tastier than pills. Okay, number 3, I encourage you to love your liver. And lemons are good for loving your liver. That's why I put lemons there. So your liver is an honorary sex organ. It got the honorary sex organ award because it regulates your hormone levels. So it doesn't make the sex hormones, but it breaks them down, and it also produces the cholesterol that we need to make the hormones. So yes, cholesterol is a nutrient, cholesterol is necessary, and we have to have cholesterol in our bodies to make our hormones. Your liver also metabolizes and breaks down those toxins that we talked about regarding environmental contamination so that they can be excreted from your body through your bowel. Here's a list of some foods that are great for your liver. So we've got beets, garlic, and onions, and anything in that allium family. Eggs because of the sulfur in them. Lemon and lime, bitter greens, burdock and dandelion root because these flavors, sour and bitter, stimulate your liver. Number 4 is to be a quitter. Now I know you ladies are not quitters at anything else in your life. That people that are most invested in working on their fertility are hardworking and devoted and committed and are doing everything that they possibly can to bring their healthy babies into the world. So when I say be a quitter, I'm specifically referring to smoking, of course. And, although young women are smoking less than they were in the 80s, it's still 20% of women who are choosing to smoke. And smoking has a long list of negative effects on fertility, miscarriage risk, and your child's future health. So the single most important choice that you could make today if you are smoking is to quit. The single most important health choice your partner can make today if he smokes or she smokes is to quit, because the exposure that you have to the secondhand smoke, even if they're not smoking in the car or in the house, still coming off their body. It's on their clothes, it's coming off their breath, and if you're sleeping beside them, you're inhaling the exhaust of that smoking all night long. Okay, so enough said on the smoking. You gotta quit. Number 5 is to sleep better than a baby. So you know how babies kind of don't always sleep, so I don't want to say sleep like a baby, in case you know of babies who don't sleep very well. But sleep is super important with regulating your fertility and is essential to hormonal balance. And sleep issues are also linked with certain hormonal imbalances like polycystic ovarian syndrome and, of course, depressed sexual function. Number 6, we're almost there. So this is whittle your waistline, because the risks of being overweight or obese before your conception are high. And I have this slide in here as a quote because I think it really says it all, and I'm going to let you read it. But it's really actually a very important intervention that you can make. And if you are having trouble losing weight, please get some help with your healthcare practitioner. It is 100% possible to reduce some of that weight before you conceive. And in many cases, if you're not ovulating, losing just about 5 to 10% of your body weight can allow you to start ovulating again. So it's an amazing intervention for your health, for your baby's health, and of course for your fertility. So as I said, a little bit of weight loss goes a long way, and when you're letting go of excess fat tissue that you're losing when you're losing weight, you're letting go of a source of estrogen. That's what I call renegade estrogen. It's not being produced by your ovaries or your adrenal glands. It's being produced by the fat cells themselves, and it can create imbalances in your fertility hormones. It's also a storage site for environmental toxins. The toxins that are fat soluble, like certain pesticides and plastic chemicals, those actually store in our fat tissue. So if we can reduce the amount of fat tissue in our body to a healthy amount, and even start to modify our exposure to these toxins, and I'll tell you how to do that shortly, then you can relieve a lot of your toxic burden and sources of hormonal imbalance, because these chemicals look and act like hormones to our hormone receptors on our cells. And number 7, I would like you to go green your clean. So stuff that is scented, even if it smells good or it's quote unquote natural, it is actually perceived and treated like a toxin by your body. So this is everything from personal care products and menstrual products and soaps and shampoos and car fresheners. Anything that's stinky has got to go. And I also promised to tell you about what the purgeable peas are that you can try to reduce from your lifestyle or get them out. And these are pesticides, phthalates, and parabens. And phthalates and parabens, look on your labels of your cosmetics products, including your shampoo. I just realized that my husband's shampoo has methylparaben in it, which is a toxic chemical. It's hormone disrupting, it's carcinogen, and I was really disappointed because I hadn't screened that one properly. But anyway, it's going to be no longer available for anyone in our house. And you just have to be careful with cosmetics and personal care products because it's not regulated. They're not there to protect us. They're there to sell products. And right now the industry is just not being watched, other than by Environmental Working Group, which has great research and a resource to screen your products against. Okay. Going on with the purgeable peas, petroleum. Petroleum byproducts are byproducts of the tar sands industry. So this includes Vaseline, petroleum jelly, petrolatum, and mineral oil. And these chemicals have no place on your body. They actually occlude your pores, and there's some issues with safety. So I would get those out too and just use natural oil bases for your products like olive oil and coconut oil. Perfumes, as I mentioned, are totally purgeable, and so are plastics. And I was trying to play a little game with myself to see this week how long I could go in a day without touching plastic, and it was extremely difficult. But we absorb plastic chemicals from our food if the food is stored in it. We're touching our computers, and our cars contain plastics, and they're just everywhere. Our food comes in plastic bags. So that's one that's really hard, but if you're conscious about it, you can start to look for options to reduce plastic use. Okay. So I'm going to pause here because we're just coming up on our time, and I know many of you will have to go. And I'm going to get you to take a look at this worksheet, and I'm going to just assign this to you for homework. So go through this worksheet, and you can print it out, or you can kind of do it in your mind online. And one thing that I do in my fertility coaching is I teach you affirmations that will help you to build new neural pathways to overcome a different kind of obstacle, one that we haven't talked about yet tonight, and that's an emotional or subconscious obstacle to fertility, to conception, to bringing a healthy baby into the world. And I've talked to many, many of you now about this and coached you through one or two issues. And I found that every single one of those calls, the woman or the couple has been able to reach an insight that they never even knew was a problem for them. And that's been amazing to witness. And you can use these affirmations to train your brain to be receptive in a positive way to the state that you're really looking for when you've realized what an obstacle is and how to create a new normal for your brain to be attuned to. So I can give you more information on that if you're interested, and you can certainly send me an email. And my email address is fertilityempowerment@gmail.com if you'd like to know more about this aspect. Okay, I'll just finish with a note on the relaxation response. It is highly valuable in your fertility journey. And the nerves that control our fertility are ones that are turned on when we're relaxed. So activities like yoga, breathing, you're practicing your affirmations, having a warm bath, having fun, going for a walk. These are all activities that are conducive to your fertility. So I really want to encourage you to this week find a way to implement some relaxation, even if you schedule it into your week or your day. I think that can be a highly valuable tool for you, and everyone relaxes a little bit differently, so feel free to be creative with that. Okay, so I want to just conclude with a thought. What is possible for you? I want to get you dreaming a little bit. You may be in a rut with your fertility. It may have been years that you've been trying, or it may be that you haven't even started trying yet, and you're here tonight listening because you want to prepare the way for the easiest possible conception and pregnancy and healthiest possible baby. That is awesome. What is your dream? What do you feel possible? And actually, where are you feeling blocked? What do you feel is not possible right now? The program that I've developed to help with this journey is called the Fertility Empowerment Program, and it is designed to help you build your most fertile foundations, physical, mental, and emotional, to break through obstacles that you might not even right now know are standing in your way, or ones that you've already been diagnosed with, and to bring your best self to the journey, no matter what outcomes come your way, being okay and being well within that journey and having support with it. So if you feel ready to take your fertility to that next level, and by next level I mean like a deeper level, a more personal level inside yourself, then you may be interested in talking about this with me. To my knowledge, this is the only program available with all of the naturopathic and medical background to it, as well as helping you get to these insights that really you are leading yourself to. That's not me doing it, but I can help guide you to it, and it's amazing. And this week I have enough space in my schedule for about 6 of you. So if there are questions that you have, you can email me. It's fertilityempowerment@gmail.com. And if you're interested in having a phone call with me, it's totally free. It will just give you an opportunity to work through one issue that you're working on right now and decide if you're ready for a program that will really structure your journey for you and give you the tools that you can learn within 3 months. That if you conceive or not, that's okay. You can take those tools and manage your fertility lifestyle in a really practical way for as long as it takes to bring that healthy baby into the world, and even beyond, because it's actually a whole health-based program. So I'm going to leave you with that. I'm going to open up the question box and just see if there's any questions right now. So if you do have any questions at all about anything that I've mentioned, then feel free to post them in the box. And I see a question about acupuncture. So the benefits of acupuncture are many. Acupuncture can help with hormonal balance. It helps with relaxation. It helps to balance the whole person's constitution. So when we're looking at acupuncture, we're taking into account the whole person. Are you more stressed? Are you more damp? Are you more dry? And rebalancing the whole constitution with special points that boost your fertility. It tends to be a really relaxing treatment. It's more relaxing than you might think, given that there's needles involved, but the needles are really tiny and smooth, and sometimes you don't feel them at all, and sometimes people even fall asleep during the treatment. Okay, I'm going to just click stop on the recording, and I will stay on for additional questions. And again, if you want to email me privately, you can do so at the email address listed on your screen.